What is going on, my friends? Hank here from Sprues and Brews Scale Modeling, and today we're going to do something a little different. A lot of folks have asked in the comments for me to share a little bit about the World War II replicas and memorabilia that I have here in the studio, so I figured today is a great opportunity to check some of it out. We're going to start with this lovely piece of equipment here, this non-firing replica of the famous US submachine gun caliber 45 M3, more commonly known as the M3 grease gun. This safe replica from the Spanish company Denix is perfect for display in your home or office and can definitely be used for some reenactment work as well. So we're going to check out some of the features of this iconic replica and talk a little bit about the history of the original firearm. So in the early days of World War II, before the US had joined the conflict, members of the US Army Ordnance Board were paying close attention to the weapons that were being used overseas. In our story today, in particular, they were curious about the German MP40 and the British Sten gun, both of which were cheap and simple to manufacture, and they were primarily made out of stamped sheet metal parts. By contrast, the US's main SMG at the time, the model 1928 Thompson, was constructed from milled steel and wooden parts and would cost around $200 per unit to manufacture at the time, which was a lot. These required a lot more skilled labor to produce, and when there's a war on, obviously every dollar and hour spent counts. So in 1941, the Ordnance Board puts out an order for a submachine gun that's primarily made out of stamped sheet metal, requires the smallest possible amount of skilled machining work, and can be at least 90% accurate on a 6x6 foot target at 50 yards. They're also going to stick with the 45 caliber because that's what we're already working with the Thompson. So fast forward to the end of 1942, the US is officially in the war, and the M3 officially enters production as the intended eventual replacement of the Thompson. After some production delays, they first enter combat shortly after the Invasion of Normandy and start to phase out the M1A1 Thompson in all the same roles where the Thompson would be issued. So tank crews, drivers, NCOs, officers, paratroopers, etc. And since these were so small and relatively cheap to produce, they could get a lot more of these out to troops in the field in a lot of cases. With tank crews, for instance, traditionally one Sherman tank crew would be issued with a single Thompson SMG. But now, each member of the 5-man crew is getting an M3 on top of their M1911 sidearm. Decent improvement, if you ask me. So onto our replica itself. This guy weighs just under 7 pounds, it's about 2 feet long, and it is made primarily out of zinc. It's a super sturdy piece of equipment, definitely not a toy, and it has some real heft to it. If we come back here to the sliding stock, there's a simple push release on the back here that we push. That's going to slide right out like so. And that gives us a decently sturdy stock for shoulder firing. And to slide that back, we just depress the button again, and there it goes. We've got a slightly gnarled handle on our pistol grip here, and a working trigger mechanism, and our basic trigger guard. If you flip the replica over here, you can see this big seam. On the real weapon, this would have been a weld that goes all around the stamped steel parts to hold the two sides together. But on this replica, it's a pretty clean little line there. If we pop up to our rear sight here, this is one of the only real errors I was able to detect with this replica, but it's not a big one. It's more of an anachronism than anything. The original M3 grease guns only had a simple folded piece of sheet metal here with an aperture that served as the rear sight, and that would just be welded right on the back of the weapon here. But there were some issues with it breaking off in the field, so with the later M3A1 variant of the grease gun, they added these protective wings to the side of the rear sight to give it a little more oomph. So this is technically an M3A1 rear sight on an M3, but no big deal. If you noticed it before I mentioned it though, props to you. And while we're on the subject of sights, our foresight is just a simple blade right in front of the dust cover here. Aside from our sliding stock, there are a few more working mechanisms with this replica here. Our magazine comes out as a simple push button mag release on the side here, and that is going to help us take out our 30 round stick magazine. This would have been a 30 round double stack single feed mag, but as you can see there, it's hollow, there's no spring on the inside, but it looks pretty good on the outside. And we can easily just pop that back in here, like so. If we move up here to our dust cover, this actually works double duty on this weapon, or on the real version of this weapon. It helps keep junk out of our mechanism, obviously, but it also works as the safety of this firearm. Now, if we flip this open, you'll see this little notch here, and this is actually the safety. It's going to fit inside this little groove, and it's going to prevent the bolt from cycling on the real deal if this weapon were dropped or smacked on the inside of a tank or something like that. Simple, but effective. On this replica, you can really force it if you want to, but you can see here that the charging handle won't go back if the shield is down. The bolt mechanism in this replica does move, and this charging handle on the side here is the key difference between the M3 and the later M3A1 grease guns. With the later models, they removed this charging handle altogether because it was having issues getting stuck on gear or actually breaking off in the field, which is not a good thing. So if you see a charging handle on the side of a grease gun, it is an M3, not an M3A1. So if we flip our dust cover and pull this back, the bolt is going to lock into place. And with the trigger pull, it slams forward. Now we can close that up. And on the other side of the replica, you can see we have 2 sling mounts here. So you can get yourself a sling if you'd like. On a real weapon, these would have been welded on, but we just have screws here. Not a big deal. Not a deal breaker for me. And we also have this little piece on here where the oiling tool would go. This is just a static part on the replica though. And we have just a few markings on this. Just above the mag release here, we have submachine gun caliber 45 M3. And just below it, we have Denix, made in Spain, US number 101100. So there you go. So there you have it, the Denix Replica Display M3 grease gun. I'm a big fan of this guy. It sits really well up here with all my US tanker gear. I picked mine up from Replica Weaponry here in the US for $125, which is a real steal if you're asking me, if you're just looking for a high quality display piece like this. I'll have links in the description below to both the Denix site and the Replica Weaponry site if you'd like to check out this replica for yourself. So thank you for watching. Until next time, my friends, be well, happy building, scale modelers. Cheers.